Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Gridiron podcast. My name is Nick, and unfortunately, Mike is unable to join us today. He is currently flying back home for Thanksgiving. So let's get started in episode number 15. All right, so this past week of the NFL was pretty crazy to say the least. We had a couple of good matchups that happened across the league, and we're going to talk about some of them. I'm going to start off with the game that I actually attended. I went to the Detroit Lions versus Indianapolis Colts game. Uh, this game was one-sided, but it was very slow for the Lions offense throughout the entire game. Run game was kind of slow. Pass game was slow. They were getting pressure on Jared Goff a little bit. The defense is really what kind of stood out for me. They started off with allowing Anthony Richardson to turn these plays from like a 2-yard gain into like a 15, 20-yard gain. And that happened early on in the game. But then towards the second half, the defense really started picking it up. Now, I know what Colts fans are going to say. There was a lot of penalties on the Indianapolis Colts that really should not have been called. And to that, I say, you can't set a wide receiver pick no matter what. If he makes any contact with a player, it's in terms of like going like this or going like this, it's a pick, and that turns into offensive pass interference. But some of them were kind of questionable. The illegal hands to the face was definitely not questionable when the offensive lineman ripped Aleem McNeil's helmet off. But it was overall really good game to be at. It was pretty much 50-50 split between Lions fans and Colts fans. It was a really fun game to be at and to actually witness live. The next game I will be talking about is the Minnesota Vikings versus the Chicago Bears. Obviously an NFC North matchup. This game went into overtime. I feel like both offenses were doing pretty decently. I do still think that Matt Eberflus should get fired. He had a lot of questionable play calls that happened throughout the game, and Minnesota was just able to just take advantage of certain scenarios that they had, and especially in overtime where they were just kind of able to march down the field with ease. So that was a good win for the Vikings. They are currently sitting at 9-2, second in the NFC North. Do I think the Bears season is over? Not really. I think it's going to depend on the game today on Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way. I haven't said that yet. Happy Thanksgiving. But it's going to depend on the game between the Lions and the Bears if the Bears season is over. Right now, they are sitting at 4-7. I don't see a world where they make the playoffs, but they could make a push towards the end of the season just to see if they can get a shot at a wild card spot. We've seen crazier things, but in terms of their season being over, I don't think it is. I do think that we do see Matt Eberflus getting fired, whether it's after the Lions game or towards the end of the season. But in terms of the Vikings, they were able to just take advantage of situations, like I said, and really good pocket presence from Sam Darnold. He was able to stay in the pocket and really read the defense. The next game I will be talking about is the Packers versus the 49ers. I mean, this game really was kind of lopsided. The Packers came out, handled business against the 49ers. The 49ers are truly struggling at this point. I'm trying to figure out a way to actually explain what is going on with the 49ers because they have CMC back, they have Debo back. It's not looking good for them. And with this loss, I can see them missing the playoffs. I mean, I talked about this a couple weeks ago. Really, they don't. So who knows going into it? I do think that they will end up missing the playoffs based on just how competitive the NFC is. In terms of the Packers, really good game out of Josh Jacobs. We saw the Josh Jacobs that we were expecting to see in Green Bay this entire season, and he really was able to step it up in terms of the run game. The next game that I am talking about is the Dallas Cowboys versus the Washington Commanders. Now, Dallas, if anybody knows how I feel about Dallas specifically, you'll know I cannot stand them. I think they're horrible. I think they're a lost cause to the NFL. This game against the Commanders have been hot. Obviously, a couple of bad losses now. But overall, throughout the season, they've been hot. They've been winning games, doing Hail Marys. They've been winning close games, blowing out teams. No matter how you think about it, they've been doing really good. And the NFC East is kind of competitive in terms of those two top teams being the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. And then you have the Cowboys and the Giants who are just utter horrible, right? So the Cowboys end up taking this 34-26. It was on the road, so they are yet to still win a game at AT&T Stadium in the calendar year of 2024, which is absolutely insane. The fact that they have not won a home game in the calendar year of 2024. Good job, Jerry. Way to go all in. But it was just an off game, I feel like, for the Commanders. Jaden Daniels, he had decent stats. He was able to go 25 of 38 for 275, 2 touchdowns, and obviously had those 2 picks. The run game was kind of lacking. You had Austin Eckler only getting 9 rushes for 22 yards. And then besides that, you got 3 rushes for 22 yards from McNichols, 1 rush for 14 yards by Brown, and then Robinson coming in with 5 rushes and 13 yards. The end of the game really was just insane. You had a kickoff that was fumbled and recovered at the 1-yard line, returned for a touchdown, and then a 70-yard touchdown to Terry McLaurin, missed extra point, went for an onside kick. Dallas recovered it, scored a touchdown. It was just the most insane game that I was able to see throughout this entire week. And for Dallas, this is decent for them. They move up to 4-7. I do still see them missing the playoffs. I think they're so much of a lost cause that I feel like I don't think there's any hope for them making the playoffs this year. And it sucks because you have CeeDee Lamb locked into a 4-year contract, Dak Prescott locked into a 4-year contract. And it sucks because you have these guys like Zach Martin who have been there for a while who just want to win one. And to be a team that you're known as America's team, but you can't even make it to the NFC Championship game. And now you lost to the Packers last year in the playoffs. And now it's like you can't even win at all. You're not making it to the playoffs. For the Commanders, they fall to 7-5. They are obviously second in the NFC East behind the Philadelphia Eagles. It's going to be tough for them because of how competitive those wild card positions are. Obviously, you have Minnesota, you have Green Bay. I think Washington is kind of set in that 7 spot, but now you have like the Seahawks and Rams starting to come up a little bit. But we'll have to see going forward how the Commanders actually come out with this, right? So the next game I am going to be talking about is the Tennessee Titans taking on the Houston Texans. Now, obviously, we saw Will Levis coming in and starting. The Titans were able to take down the Texans 32-27. Titans going up to 3-8 on the season, and the Texans falling to 7-5. Obviously, still first place in the AFC South, which, by the way, the Lions run the NFC South or AFC South, with blowout wins against Tennessee, Jacksonville, just beating the Colts this year, and then that huge comeback win against Houston. But looking at the stat line, Will Levis looked like a Will Levis I have never seen before. 18 for 24, 278 yards, 2 touchdowns, and obviously that 1 pick. But on the other side, you had CJ Stroud. Now, CJ Stroud has been obviously last year's offensive rookie of the year for the NFC or AFC, sorry. And he's been kind of rolling this year, but he went 20 of 33 for 247 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Now, with the Titans winning this game, I'm like, where are the Texans going to fall in terms of playoffs? Because I think they're winning their division. I think there's no shot that the other teams kind of come in. Colts, obviously, they played a hard-fought game against Detroit, losing 24-6. But it's the AFC South is the Texans are so far ahead in terms of the standings. But, I mean, you had horrible rushing yards from Joe Mixon, 14 carries for 22 yards. That's a 1.6 yards per carry. That's not something that we see every day from Joe Mixon. And then obviously you get Nico Collins back and you don't win with him back. He went 5 catches for 92 yards and 1 touchdown. Then Tank Dell, 3 catches for 72 yards. And then everyone else is pretty much 26, 23, 28, 6, 0. Their defense, I mean, you had 2 players with 6 tackles, 1 player with 6 sacks, that being Danielle Hunter. So the Titans able to come out with the win in Houston. That's big for their morale, especially having Will Levis throwing for over 250 yards and having a better touchdown to interception ratio. Tony Pollard coming out strong, 24 rushes for 119 yards. That's a 5-yard average with 1 touchdown. And then Calvin Ridley, 5 catches, 93 yards. Okonkwo had 1 catch for 70 yards. Boyd, 6 catches for 55 yards. Westbrook Akine, 2 catches, 48 yards. And then you had 10 yards from Pollard, 2 yards from Chestnut, and then no catches for Vanette. But I mean, it's a hard fought game from the Titans, and Texans. Now, the next game, I never thought I'd be saying this, but Kansas City versus Carolina. Now, this game, they had the score line kind of playing at Lucas Oil Stadium. The Chiefs almost losing to the Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young. They won 30-27. It was just, obviously you had the 2-point conversion. You had a couple of plays that could have went another way for Carolina. But let's get into some stats here. I mean, Kansas City going to 10-1. And then the Panthers falling to 3-8. Panthers are not making the playoffs. We've known this. The NFC South is kind of crazy right now. But Chiefs obviously tied for the best record in the NFL. I do not think they're the top two teams in the NFL. I think Buffalo kind of goes ahead of them, obviously winning a couple weeks ago. But I think maybe you could put Philadelphia in there. Kansas City, for being 10-1, you're having Patrick Mahomes perform at the worst that he's performed in his entire career. But this game, 27-37 for 269 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then in terms of rushing, you had Kareem Hunt, 16 rushes for 68 yards. Patrick Mahomes, 5 rushes, 60 yards. Hardman, 2 carries for 15 yards. P. Ryan, one rush for 13 yards. Xavier Worthy, 1 rush, 5 yards. Steele is 1 rush for 4 yards. And then in terms of receiving, Noah Gray, 4 receptions for 66 yards, for 2 touchdowns. Travis Kelce, 6 receptions for 62 yards. Xavier Worthy, 4 for 46. D-Hop, 5 for 35. Kareem Hunt, 3 for 19. That kind of goes off. But what really surprised me is Bryce Young, obviously getting benched in the middle of the season. We've been saying at the beginning of the season, who's the worst quarterback in the league? We were saying like Daniel Jones, who just got released by the Giants, Bryce Young, and then we were saying like Will Levis. Bryce Young, 21 of 35 for 263 yards and 1 touchdown. I think that's a really good game from Bryce Young. He was able to kind of carve up the Chiefs defense, which is not very easy to do as a second-year player, kind of not so great quarterback type of player. And then in terms of rushing, you had Hubbard, 16 rushes for 58 yards. Bryce Young, 3 rushes for 20. Jonathan Brooks, 2 rushes for 7 yards. Hubbard also had that 1 touchdown. And then in terms of receiving, Moore is 6 receptions for 81 yards and 1 touchdown. Thielen, 3 receptions for 57 yards. Leggett, 4 receptions, 56 yards. Sanders, 3 receptions, 49 yards. Tompkins, 3 receptions for 13 yards. And then it's Tremble at 1 at 5 and Hubbard 1 at 2. And then in terms of defense, you had Woods with 7 tackles, 1 assist. So it was just an overall really good game for them. Unfortunately, they did lose to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. But for the Chiefs specifically, to almost lose to the Broncos a couple weeks ago, barring that blocked kick, losing to the Bills and almost losing to the Panthers, I think it's a downward trend for the Chiefs. Do I think they're going to make it to the Super Bowl? Really depends on how the Ravens and Bills kind of build up towards the playoffs. Do I think they're winning the Super Bowl? No. I'll say it right now. I don't think they're going for a three-peat. Personally, I've been liking seeing potential of Bills versus Lions Super Bowl. I think that might be the drunkest Super Bowl ever, having two franchises that have never won a Super Bowl. Obviously, the Bills, want to say it was the 70s that they lost four straight, and then the Lions never making it to the Super Bowl in the Super Bowl era. Obviously winning a couple championships before then, but that might be a really cool Super Bowl to watch. Call it Thanksgiving 2024. Nick called a Bills versus Lions Super Bowl matchup, and I'll predict the Lions will win it. So we'll go with that. And then the last game that I'm going to be talking about is the game that happened on Monday Night Football, that being the Baltimore Ravens versus the Los Angeles Chargers. The Harbaugh Bowl is what they called it, with obviously John and Jim Harbaugh being the coaches for their respective teams. The Ravens come out and win this 30-23. Ravens go up to 8-4. Chargers fall to 7-4. Now, Ravens, I do think 100% they're making the playoffs. They've been having a good season, starting off 0-2, winning 6-7 straight, and then losing a couple of games, really close games. And I feel like they're on the upward trend. You had Lamar Jackson at 16 of 22 for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns with 0 interceptions. And then what I think is, I saw this comparison, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry are Shaq and Kobe. I don't know how I feel about that. But Derrick Henry, 24 rushes for 140 yards, no touchdowns. And then Hill came out with 4 carries, 55 yards with 1 touchdown. Lamar Jackson, 8 rushes for 15 yards, 1 touchdown. Mark Andrews came out with 1 carry with 2 yards. And then in terms of receiving, you had Zay Flowers, 5 receptions for 62 yards. Mark Andrews, 5 receptions, 44 yards, and 1 touchdown. Rashawn Bateman, 2 receptions for 43 yards. Wallace came out with 1 reception, 15 yards. And then you had Hill at 2 at 7. Kolar, 1 at 6. Johnson did not catch the ball. And then in terms of defense, you had Harrison coming out with 6 tackles, 6 assists. He was really kind of the star on that defense. And then in terms of the Chargers, Justin Herbert, not too shabby of a game, but he was 21 of 36, 218 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. Rushing, you had J.K. Dobbins, 6 carries for 40 yards. Justin Herbert, 4 carries for 29 yards. Gus Edwards, 9 for 11. And then Haskins, 1 for 3. And then receiving, you had McConkey, 6 receptions, 83 yards. Whistler, 4 at 47. Palmer, 3 at 38. Reger, 2 at 20. Dobbins, 3 at 19. Fisk, 1 at 7. Davis, 2 at 4. And then Edwards and Johnston did not get involved in the rush game. And then defensively, you had Henley and Neiman, and still really being the top performers. Henley, 4 tackles, 6 assists. Neiman, 4 tackles, 4 assists. Still 4 tackles, 3 assists. And then right behind them, you had Ford at 3 tackles and 2 assists. Obviously, you can't win a game scoring field goals left and right. Obviously, you had a couple of good plays from the Chargers, but dropping down to 7-4, they are currently sitting second in the AFC West. Based on how the AFC is kind of playing out, I do see them making the playoffs in the wild card spot. And then the Ravens, I think they're making the playoffs as well. But that is going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. Happy Thanksgiving. New episodes coming out every single Thursday. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Gridiron Pod NFL. Subscribe to the YouTube. We see you guys interacting with us. We answer every single comment. Just keep on letting us know how you guys like the episodes, what you guys want us to do differently, and keep showing love. And you guys can also find us on Spotify and Amazon Music. New episodes coming out every single Thursday. And happy Thanksgiving, guys. See you guys next time.